The arena floor was slick with alien blood, 3 different colors, painting abstract patterns across. The obsidian surface. Captain Vera Kane pressed her back against the cold metal wall, watching as the crowd of Vorthic spectators roared their approval at the fresh carnage. Her fellow prisoners had lasted longer than expected, for minutes, maybe 5. Now it was her turn. The human female approaches. The announcer's voice crackled through bioacoustic translators, his words dripping with contempt. Behold the final representative of the pathetic species that dared challenge the hegemony. Vera's hands were bound with energy shackles that burned against her wrists. The neural suppressor collar round her neck felt like ice against her throat, designed to prevent any enhanced reflexes or combat stims from functioning. She was exactly what the Vorthic wanted, helpless prey for their entertainment. 3 months ago, she'd been commanding the UES Retribution, humanity's most advanced destroyer. In the Battle of Kepler 442, the engagement had been brutal. 12 human ships against a Vorthic fleet 3 times their size. They'd held the line for 18 hours before the inevitable overwhelm. Vera had been one of 7 survivors pulled from the wreckage, and now she was the last. The crowd's chittering grew louder as the arena doors ground open. Through the shadows emerged her opponent, a Kathmori warrior standing nearly 8 feet tall, its forearms ending in razor-sharp claws, its hide thick as armor plating. The creature's mandibles clicked with anticipation as it stepped into the arena, leaving deep gouges in the metal flooring. Vera had studied the Kathmori during her years in the Fleet Intelligence Corps. They were the hegemony's primary shock troops, bred for violence, engineered for killing. Their reaction time was 3 times faster than baseline human. Their strength capable of crushing steel. In their natural habitat, they hunted in packs, tearing apart prey with coordinated precision. And now, the announcer's voice rose to a fever pitch. We honor the ancient tradition of the final hunt. The human will be given a weapon, as is our magnanimous custom. A section of the arena floor opened, and a mechanical arm extended upward, holding something that made the crowd erupt in laughter. It was a stick, a simple wooden stick, roughly 3 feet long, probably cut from some tree on a conquered world. The kind of thing a child might use to poke at insects. The neural collar sent a spike of pain through Vera's skull as she stared at the pathetic weapon. The Vorthic weren't just executing her, they were humiliating her species one final time, making a mockery of human ingenuity, human warfare, human courage. The stick was meant to be the punchline to a cosmic joke, but as Vera walked forward, her combat boots echoing in the sudden silence, something shifted in her expression. The crowd's laughter began to fade as they caught sight of her eyes, cold, calculating, absolutely unafraid. She'd spent 15 years in the Colonial Marines before joining Fleet Command. She'd survived the Proxima Uprising, the Titan Rebellion, and the brutal urban warfare on New Jakarta. She'd killed her first enemy at age 19 with nothing but a broken bottle and pure desperation. The aliens had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They'd assumed a weapon was what made humans dangerous. Vera reached the center of the arena and picked up the wooden stick, testing its weight and balance. The Kathmori warrior circled her, its forearms spreading wide, claws extending. The neural collar continued sending waves of disorientation, but beneath the artificial fog, her mind was crystal clear. The crowd fell silent, sensing something had changed. In the VIP section, hegemony officials leaned forward in their seats. The human wasn't cowering, she wasn't begging, she was smiling. Begin the final hunt, the announcer declared. The Kathmori lunged forward with inhuman speed, all 4 claws aimed at Vera's torso. The crowd roared, anticipating the spray of human blood across the arena floor. They were about to discover what made humanity the most feared species in the galaxy. The Kathmori's attack came faster than thought, 4 arms striking simultaneously, claws extended to disembowel. But Vera had already moved, dropping into a combat crouch she'd perfected in the blood-soaked trenches of New Jakarta. The wooden stick swept upward in a precise arc, connecting with the creature's lead arm at the joint. The crack of breaking bone echoed through the arena. The Kathmori shrieked a sound like tearing metal as its foremost limb bent at an impossible angle. But pain only enraged the creature further. Its remaining 3 arms lashed out in a frenzy, claws carving gouges in the air where Vera's head had been a split second before. She rolled left, came up beside the creature's flank, and drove the pointed end of the stick into the gap between its armor plates. The weapon penetrated to inches before the alien's hide stopped it, but that was enough. Black HFY spurted from the wound as the HFY spun with shocking speed. Backhanding Vera across the arena. She hit the wall hard enough to crack ribs. Tasting blood as she slid to the floor, the neural collar sent another pulse of disorientation through her system, making her vision blur. The crowd was on its feet now, no longer laughing. This wasn't going according to script. The HFY advanced, favoring its wounded side. Mandibles clicking with fury, its broken arm hung useless. But 3 clawed limbs were more than enough to tear apart one small human. It had survived hunting expeditions on 12 different worlds, killed enemies that could crack mountains with their bare hands, but it had never fought a human. Vera forced herself upright, spitting blood onto the arena floor. The wooden stick had snapped in half during her impact with the wall, leaving her with 2 shorter pieces, one sharp, one blunt. Better than nothing, always better than nothing. Is this the best your species can offer? She called out, her voice carrying across the silent arena. I've seen dead fish put up a better fight. The insult struck home. The HFY's hide flushed dark purple with rage, and it abandoned all pretense of caution. It charged straight at her, 3 arms spread wide to prevent escape. Vera waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to her knees and slid forward, passing directly between the creature's legs. As she moved, she drove the sharp end of her broken stick upward, targeting the soft tissue behind the HFY's knee joint. The improvised weapon punched through armor and sinew, severing the creature's Achilles equivalent. The HFY collapsed forward, its wounded leg unable to support its weight. But even falling, it twisted with predatory grace, claws raking across Vera's shoulder and opening 3 parallel gashes that ran from collarbone to elbow. She rolled away, leaving a trail of human blood on the obsidian floor. Her left arm hung nearly useless, nerves severed by the alien's claws. The neural collar was making it impossible to focus, sending constant waves of nausea and disorientation through her system. The HFY struggled to rise, its damaged leg unable to provide stable footing. Black blood pooled beneath it, mixing with Vera's red. The crowd had fallen completely silent now, watching in stunned disbelief as their champion was being systematically dismantled by a human. With a stick dot in the VIP section, Hegemony Admiral Vexthal leaned forward, his compound eyes focused intently on the arena floor. He'd witnessed thousands of gladiatorial contests, seen every species in the galaxy fight for their lives. But this was something different. The human wasn't just fighting, she was hunting. Vera circled the wounded alien, keeping just outside its reach. Blood loss was making her lightheaded, but her mind remained sharp despite the neural collar's interference. She'd learned long ago that pain was just information, useful data about the state of your body, nothing more. You know what the difference is between humans and every other species? She called out, her voice echoing in the arena. We don't fight fair. We don't fight with honor. We fight to win. The HFY lunged again, using its good leg to propel itself forward in a desperate attempt to bring its claws to bear. But Vera had anticipated the move. She stepped inside the creature's reach, grabbed its broken arm with her good hand, and used its own momentum to drive her knee into its throat. The impact crushed the alien's windpipe. The HFY's mandibles opened and closed soundlessly as it struggled for air that wouldn't come. Its remaining functional arms clawed weakly at Vera, but she was already moving. Positioning herself behind the creature's head, she placed the blunt end of her broken stick against the base of the HFY's skull and drove it forward with everything she had left. The wooden weapon punched through the alien's natural armor and into its brain stem. The creature convulsed once, then went still. Vera stood slowly, swaying slightly from blood loss. The arena was absolutely silent. 10,000 alien spectators stared in shock at the impossible scene before them. The human was still alive. The HFY was not. The silence lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the arena erupted in chaos. Hegemony officials were shouting at each other in 6 different languages, their carefully orchestrated execution having become a public relations nightmare. Admiral Vexthal was screaming orders into his communication device, his compound eyes bulging with rage. The crowd was in an uproar, some demanding the human's immediate execution, others calling for more challengers. Vera used the confusion to examine her wounds. The gashes on her shoulder were deep, but not immediately life-threatening. More concerning was the growing weakness in her leg's blood loss, combined with the neural collar's constant interference, was taking its toll. She had minutes, maybe less, before her body gave out entirely. The arena floor began to vibrate with mechanical movement. Hidden panels slid open around the perimeter, revealing weapons racks and equipment caches. Whatever the hegemony had planned for their grand finale, they were accelerating the schedule. Citizens of the hegemony, the announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Though his previous confidence had been replaced by barely controlled panic, witness the true power of our great alliance. The human pest has had her moment of luck, but now she faces the unstoppable force of our united species. 6 new passages opened simultaneously. Through them came not one opponent, but representatives of every major hegemony race. A Cyric berserker with plasma cleavers fused to its forearms. 2 Zenthri assassins moving in perfect synchronization, their bodies crackling with bioelectric energy. A massive Gorvik heavy trooper carrying a graviton mace that could flatten steel. An ethereal psionic wraith whose very presence made reality bend and twist. And finally, a hegemony combat engineer, a cyborg monstrosity that was more machine than flesh, its body bristling with integrated weapons systems. 6 enemies, 6 different fighting styles, 6 ways to die. Vera picked up the Kethmori's discarded claw, a natural weapon, nearly 2 feet long and sharp as surgical steel. It wasn't much, but it was better than a broken stick. The neural collar sent another wave of disorientation through her system, and she stumbled slightly. The combat engineer spoke first, its voice a mechanical rasp. Human designation Vera. Kane, Colonial Marines, Fleet Command. Threat assessment minimal, termination imminent. Threat assessment minimal. Vera wiped blood from her mouth and grinned. Your intelligence needs updating. The Cyric berserker didn't wait for further conversation. It charged across the arena floor, plasma cleavers carving molten gouges in the obsidian as it ran. Behind it, the other 5 spread out in a coordinated assault pattern, cutting off every avenue of escape. Vera had perhaps 2 seconds before the berserker reached her. 2 seconds to analyze 6 opponents, calculate angles of attack, and formulate a strategy that would keep her alive for more than 30 seconds. The neural collar made tactical thinking feel like swimming through molasses, but muscle memory was harder to suppress. She feinted left, drawing the Syrac's attention, then rolled right at the last instant. The berserker's plasma cleavers carved through empty air where she'd been standing, and its momentum carried it past her position. As it tried to turn, Vera drove the Kethmori claw into the gap between its shoulder plates. The alien shrieked as the natural weapon punched through its armor and into vital organs. But even mortally wounded, it lashed out with its offhand cleaver, the superheated plasma blade passing inches from Vera's face. She could feel her eyebrows singe from the heat. The 2 Zenthri assassins moved like liquid lightning, their bioelectric fields crackling as they closed distance. Vera jerked the claw free from the dying Cyric and spun to face them, but she was too slow. Neural collar interference cost her precious microseconds of reaction time. The first Zenthri's electric touch caught her across the ribs, sending 50,000 volts through her nervous system. Every muscle in her body seized simultaneously, and she collapsed to the arena floor, convulsing uncontrollably. The second assassin moved in for the kill strike, its bioelectric field building to lethal intensity. But pain was just information, and Vera had learned to process information under extreme circumstances. As the second Zenthri leaned over her, prone form, she drove the Kethmori claw upward into its throat. The creature's bioelectric field discharged directly into the conductive alien bone, creating a feedback loop that fried its nervous system instantly. The first Zenthri hesitated for a split second, a fatal mistake against a human opponent. Vera rolled to her feet and grabbed the dead assassin's partner, using it as both shield and weapon. When the surviving Zenthri tried to discharge its field, the electricity arced through its dead comrade and back into itself. Both aliens collapsed in a tangle of smoking flesh. 3 down, 3 to go. But the respite lasted only moments. The Gorvik heavy trooper was already swinging its graviton mace, the weapon's field generating crushing force that turned the air itself into a weapon. Vera threw herself backward, feeling the pressure wave pass close enough to rupture her eardrums. The psionic wraith materialized directly behind her, its psychic assault hitting like a sledgehammer to the brain. Reality twisted, up became down, and Vera found herself reliving every death she'd ever witnessed in perfect, horrible detail. The neural collar amplified the psychic attack, turning her own nervous system against her. Through the psychic chaos, she could hear the combat engineer's mechanical voice. Human vital signs critical. Termination. Probability 97.3%. But as the wraith prepared its killing stroke, something unexpected happened. The neural collar, overloaded by the competing signals from the psychic attack, finally shorted out in a shower of sparks. Suddenly, Vera's mind was clear for the first time since her capture. And a human with a clear mind was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The moment the neural collar died, Vera's enhanced reflexes came online, like a switch being thrown. Her body flooded with combat stims that had been building up behind the neural dampeners for 3 months, creating a cocktail of adrenaline, endorphins, and synthetic enhancers that turned pain into background noise and time into something fluid. The psionic wraith's mental assault, which had been overwhelming moments before, now felt like distant whispers. Vera's military neural conditioning hardwired responses drilled into her brain. During years of Black Ops training kicked in with mechanical precision. She could see the psychic entity's form solidifying as it prepared for a killing blow. Its ethereal claws extending toward her skull. Vera moved faster than thought. The HFY claw swept upward in a perfect arc, passing through the wraith's semi-corporeal form and finding the creature's physical core, a crystalline organ that anchored its consciousness to reality. The alien shrieked as its essence began unraveling, psychic feedback cascading through the arena and making sensitive species in the crowd clutch, their heads in agony. But the combat engineer was already firing, its integrated rail cannon launching tungsten slugs at hypersonic velocity. With her enhanced reflexes restored, Vera could actually see the projectiles coming, bright streaks of metal death, cutting through the air at barely sublight speed. She twisted between them, using the dying wraith's form as partial cover. The Gorvik heavy trooper swung its graviton mace again, but this time Vera was ready. She rolled forward instead of back, passing under the weapon's crushing field and coming up beside the alien's massive legs. The creature was 12 feet tall and covered in natural armor that could stop plasma fire, but every species had vulnerabilities. Vera drove the HFY claw into the soft tissue behind the Gorvak's knee, then twisted the weapon savagely. Alien blood sprayed across the arena, floor as the creature's leg buckled. As it fell, she grabbed the graviton mace from its weakening grip. The weapon was designed for a creature 3 times her size, but human determination had a way of overcoming physical limitations. Vera hefted the massive mace and turned toward the combat engineer, her enhanced strength making the impossible possible. Threat assessment update. She called out, her voice carrying clearly across the stunned arena. Human designation, Vera Kane. Current status, extremely pissed off. The combat engineer's sensors were recalculating rapidly, its artificial intelligence struggling to process what it was witnessing. The human's combat efficiency had increased by over 300% in the span of seconds. Its weapon systems tracked her movement, but she was no longer where the targeting systems expected her to be. Vera swung the graviton mace with everything she had. The weapon's field generators screamed as they channeled forces that could crush. Starship howls. The combat engineer raised its arm-mounted energy shield, confident in its defensive capabilities. The mace's gravitational field collapsed the shield like tissue paper and kept going. It struck the cyborg's center mass, and the creature simply came apart, limbs separated from torso, artificial organs scattered across the arena floor. And the machine's death scream was a symphony of failing electronics and ruptured hydraulics. Silence fell over the arena once again, but this time it was the silence of absolute shock. In less than 2 minutes, Vera had eliminated 6 opponents that should have been individually capable of killing her. The crowd of alien spectators sat motionless, their various sensory organs focused on the lone human standing among the carnage. Vera looked up at the VIP section, where Admiral Vexthal and the other hegemony officials sat frozen in their luxury. Boxes, blood streamed down her face from a dozen wounds. Her left arm hung useless at her side, and she swayed slightly from blood loss, but her eyes were absolutely clear, and when she smiled, it was the expression of a predator that had just realized it was no longer prey. "Is that all you've got?" she called out, her voice echoing in the perfect silence. 6 of your best warriors against 1 human with a stick. And this is the result. No wonder you had to form an alliance to fight us. Admiral Vextel's compound. Eyes bulged with rage and something that might have been fear. He leaned forward in his box and activated his personal communicator, his voice booming across the arena. Kill her. Kill the human now. Release everything, every warrior, every weapon, every asset this facility has. The arena floor began to shake as massive mechanical systems came online. Weapons pods descended from the ceiling. Armed hover platforms emerged from hidden bays. And from dozens of passages around the arena's perimeter came the sound of marching feet or claws, or whatever appendages the hegemony's forces used for locomotion. Vera hefted the graviton mace and checked her remaining weapons. 1 alien claw, 3 grenades she'd taken from the combat engineer's corpse, and whatever she could scavenge from the growing pile of bodies around her. The odds were impossible. The outcome was inevitable. But as the first wave of reinforcements poured into the arena, Vera Kane did something that would be remembered for 1,000 years across 100 worlds. She laughed. It was the sound of humanity's defiance in the face of extinction. The sound of a species that had climbed from the bottom of the food chain to the top through pure, bloody-minded refusal to quit. And as that laughter echoed through the arena, every alien present understood one fundamental truth about humans. They were never more dangerous than when they had nothing left to lose. The first wave hit like a tsunami of claws, fangs, and plasma fire. 37 combatants from a dozen different species poured through the arena entrances. There were cries mixing into a cacophony that would have shattered human eardrums. But Vera's enhanced hearing filtered the sound into useful information positions, distances, threat assessments flowing through her consciousness like data streams. She met them in the center of the arena, with the graviton mace swinging in wide arcs. The weapons field generators screamed as they crushed bone, metal, and chitin. With equal efficiency, a squad of hegemony shock troopers opened fire with particle rifles, their coherent energy beams carving molten channels in the obsidian floor. Vera rolled behind the massive corpse of the Gorvik heavy trooper, using its armored bulk as cover. While she planned her next move, the dead alien's body absorbed dozens of energy blasts, its natural armor proving effective even in death. She pulled one of the combat engineer's grenades from her belt, a quantum explosive that could level a city block. "Here's something we learned in the colonial marines," she called out, pulling the pin with her teeth. When outnumbered, even the odds. The grenade arched through the air and landed in the middle of the approaching formation. The quantum explosion didn't just kill the aliens in its blast radius, it erased them from existence at the molecular level, leaving perfectly spherical voids in reality that slowly filled with displaced air. 12 enemies simply ceased to exist, but 25 remained, and more were pouring through the entrances every second. A pack of draconic hunters, reptilian quadrupeds bred for tracking and killing, bounded across the arena floor with predatory grace. Their acid breath preceded them, eating through stone and metal as they closed distance. Vera abandoned the Gorvak's corpse and sprinted toward the weapon racks. The arena had revealed earlier. A draconic hunter's acid spray missed her by inches, the corrosive compound hissing as it ate through the arena floor. She dove behind a weapons cache just as plasma fire from a dozen sources turned her previous position into molten slag. Her hands closed around an alien rifle, some kind of electromagnetic accelerator that fired crystalline projectiles at relativistic speeds. The weapon was designed for a species with different hand configuration, but human adaptability was legendary. She modified her grip and opened fire. The crystalline projectiles punched through armor that could stop starship-grade weaponry. A squad of Zenthri commandos different from the assassins. These were heavily armored shock troops tried to advance under covering fire. From their hover platforms, Vera's shots found the gaps in their exoskeletons with surgical precision, dropping them one by one. But the draconic hunters were almost on top of her. She rolled left as claws raked the space where her head had been, came up running, and found herself face to face with something that made her enhanced reflexes scream warnings. It was a void stalker, a creature from the dark spaces between stars, its body barely coherent matter held together by will and hunger. The thing's touch could drain life force directly, bypassing armor and shields entirely. It had no physical form in any conventional sense, just a writhing mass of darkness with eyes like dying stars. The creature reached for her with appendages that existed in more dimensions than human perception could process. Vera's second grenade landed at the void stalker's feet, or whatever passed for feet on something that barely existed in normal spacetime. The quantum explosion tore through the creature's dimensional anchors, sending it screaming back to whatever hell had spawned it. But the blast also brought down a section of the arena ceiling, trapping Vera behind tons of rubble. She could hear the aliens regrouping on the other side of the debris pile. Admiral Vextel's voice boomed across the arena. "Deploy the siege weapons. Bring down the entire structure, if necessary. The human dies today." Heavy weapons platforms began firing particle cannons that could crack moons, gravity projectors that warped spacetime itself, molecular disruptors that unraveled atomic bonds. The arena shook under the bombardment, and Vera knew she had seconds before her makeshift shelter collapsed entirely. Her third and final grenade went into the floor at her feet. The quantum explosion created a crater 20 feet deep, dropping her into the arena's maintenance levels. She landed hard in a tangle of power conduits and life support systems, her ribs creaking from the impact. Above her, the ceiling gave way as the hegemony's heavy weapons tore through the structure. Tons of debris crashed down, followed by the screams of aliens who hadn't been fast enough to avoid the collapse. The bombardment had killed at least a dozen of their own forces, but it had also sealed Vera into the arena's bowels. She activated a chemical light stick and surveyed her surroundings. The maintenance tunnels stretched in all directions, connecting to systems throughout the complex. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on alien engineering pipes and conduits that carried power, atmosphere, and data throughout the facility. Vera's enhanced vision picked out details that would have been invisible to baseline human eyes. Structural weak points, critical system junctions, vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone with the right knowledge and the right motivation. She'd spent 2 years at the Colonial Engineering Academy before transferring to combat arms. She understood how large structures worked, how they could be made to fail catastrophically. And looking at the hegemony's engineering, she saw something interesting. They'd built their arena to be impregnable from the inside out, but they'd never considered what might happen if someone attacked it from the bottom up. Vera smiled and began placing charges from her equipment belt. She had enough explosives left to level a small building or collapse a very large one. The aliens above were still searching through the rubble, still firing their weapons into the crater she'd created. They thought they were hunting her, but as she worked her way through the maintenance tunnels, setting charges at critical structural points, Vera knew the truth. She wasn't trapped in here with them. They were trapped in here with her. The explosions began 30 seconds apart, a carefully timed sequence that brought down support beams in mathematical precision. Vera had calculated the structural collapse pattern using engineering knowledge that no alien had bothered to scan for in their psychological profiles. They'd seen a soldier, a killer, a survivor. They'd missed the architect of destruction. Above her, the arena floor cracked and buckled as its support structure failed. The screams of falling aliens mixed with the groan of twisting metal and shattering stone. Emergency klaxons wailed throughout the complex as automated systems tried to contain the catastrophic damage. But Vera wasn't finished. She emerged from the maintenance tunnels through an access hatch in the arena's eastern wall, 50 feet above the chaos. The graviton mace was gone, lost in the collapse. But she'd acquired something better, a hegemony plasma cannon. Stripped from one of the destroyed hover platforms, the weapon was designed to be crew-served, requiring multiple operators to handle its power, requirements, and recoil compensation. Vera braced it against the wall and opened fire into the panicking alien forces below. Coherent plasma beams carved through armor and flesh with equal efficiency. A squad of Cyric berserkers cousins to the one she'd killed earlier tried to scale the wall toward her position. Her plasma fire turned them into expanding clouds of superheated gas before they'd climbed 10 feet. Admiral Vextel's voice crackled over the facility's communication system. "All units converge on T. He humans. Position, bring her down at any cost." But the aliens were learning what human tactical doctrine had taught the galaxy. Concentrated forces made excellent targets. Vera's plasma cannon swept across the arena floor like a sword of light, cutting down enemies faster than they could organize effective resistance. A flight of combat drones swarmed toward her position, their weapons pods glowing with charging energy. She shifted targets and began picking them off one by one, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to track multiple fast-moving targets simultaneously. The drones' return fire chewed chunks of stone from the wall around her, but human accuracy was legendary among the stars. Then the real challenge arrived. The arena's emergency reinforcement protocols had activated, and through the main entrance came something that made Vera's threat assessment. Protocols scream warnings. It was a hegemony battle titan, a robotic war machine 40 feet tall, and armed with enough firepower to level continents. Its sensors locked onto her position immediately, and its main cannon began to glow with nuclear fire. Vera had perhaps 3 seconds before the Titan vaporized her and half the arena with her. 3 seconds to improvise a solution to a problem that would have challenged a full regiment of colonial marines. She grabbed the plasma cannon's power core, a containment unit holding enough energy to power a small city, and hurled it at the Battle Titan's sensor ray. The unit struck home just as the war machine fired, disrupting its targeting systems at the critical moment. The nuclear beam carved a molten channel through the arena ceiling, instead of through Vera's position, but the disruption was temporary. The Titan's backup sensors were already coming online, and its secondary weapons, particle beams, missile pods, and gravity projectors, were tracking toward her position. She had nowhere to run, no weapons capable of damaging something that massive, and no time to improvise another miracle. That's when the arena's structural collapse reached its final phase. Vera's carefully placed charges had done more than bring down support beams. They'd severed the primary power conduits that supplied the entire complex. Emergency lighting flickered and died as backup systems failed in cascade. Life support stopped functioning. Artificial gravity generators went offline. In the sudden darkness and zero gravity, the Battle Titan's massive bulk became a liability instead of an asset. It tumbled helplessly as its stabilization systems struggled to compensate for the lost gravitational field. Its weapons fire went wild, carving random destruction through the arena as it spun out of control. Vera used the zero gravity to her advantage, pushing off from the wall and diving toward the Titan's head unit. Her combat knife, a monomolecular blade that could cut through molecular bonds, found the gap between armor plates that protected the war machine's central processor. The Titan thrashed like a dying beast as its artificial intelligence fragmented, its weapons firing randomly into the darkness. One blast punched through the arena's outer wall, depressurizing the entire structure and sucking dozens of aliens into the vacuum of space. Vera rode the dying machine down as artificial gravity returned, its massive bulk crushing the remaining enemy forces beneath tons of twisted metal. When the smoke cleared and the emergency lighting flickered back on, she was standing on top of the wreckage, surrounded by the corpses of 200 of the hegemony's finest warriors. The arena was silent except for the hiss of escaping atmosphere and the crackle of electrical fires. In the VIP section, Admiral Vextel sat motionless in his luxury box, his compound eyes reflecting the flames that consumed his grand spectacle. Vera looked up at him and smiled, the same predatory expression that had preceded every victory in this nightmare arena. Then she began walking toward the VIP section, stepping over alien corpses with casual indifference. The hunt was over, but the reckoning had just begun. Admiral Vextel tried to run. The sight of Vera Kane walking through the carnage, stepping over the scattered remains of his finest warriors, finally broke through the arrogance that had sustained him for decades. His 6 legs carried him toward the emergency exit. As fast as his aging chitin would allow, he made it 3 steps before Vera's voice stopped him cold. "Where are you going, Admiral? The show's not over." She'd found a functional hover platform among the wreckage and used it to reach the VIP section. Her stolen plasma rifle was aimed directly at the Admiral's thorax, its power cell still showing enough charge for one final shot. Round them, the surviving hegemony officials cowered in their luxury boxes. These were beings who commanded fleets that could crack worlds, who held the fate of entire species in their claws and tentacles. But faced with one blood-soaked human female, they huddled like prey animals before a predator. "You wanted to see humanity's final moments," Vera said, her enhanced voice carrying clearly through the ruined arena. "Instead, you got a preview of your own. How does it feel to be on the receiving end for once?" Admiral Vextel's mandibles clicked nervously, but he tried to maintain his dignity. You have proven remarkably resilient, human, but you are still one individual against an empire of trillions. Your victory here is meaningless, is it?" Vera gestured toward the broadcast equipment that had been recording the entire spectacle. This was being transmitted across the galaxy, wasn't it? Live footage of humanity's execution, meant to break the spirit of our remaining colonies. The Admiral's compound eyes widened as understanding dawned. The arena's quantum communication arrays were still functional, still broadcasting to every corner of hegemony space. What should have been humanity's final humiliation had become something else entirely. Every species in your empire just watched. One human destroy 100 of your best warriors with improvised weapons and determination. Vera continued, how many of your subject races are wondering right now what would happen if they fought back? How many are realizing that the mighty hegemony isn't quite as invulnerable as you claimed? She was right, and they both knew it. The broadcast had already reached a dozen star systems, on worlds where enslaved populations had endured hegemony rule for generations. The impossible footage was sparking something that had been dormant for too long. Hope. The communication arrays crackled with incoming transmissions, reports of uprisings on 3 different worlds. A hegemony patrol fleet had gone dark in the Centauri sector. The Proximan resistance cells that everyone thought had been crushed were suddenly active again, hitting supply convoys with coordinated precision. The humans taught us something valuable during our war with them, Vera said, never taking her aim off the Admiral. It's not about superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It's about refusing to quit, about finding a way to win even when winning seems impossible. She stepped closer, her plasma rifle inches from Vexthal's head. Your empire exists because subject species believe they can't fight back. But belief is a fragile thing, Admiral, and you just shattered it for everyone watching. The arena's communication system suddenly activated with an incoming transmission. The holographic display materialized in the center of the ruined arena, showing a figure that made every alien in the VIP section freeze with terror. It was Admiral Theron Blackwater, commander of the human resistance fleet, his scarred face filled. The projection, his cold eyes taking in the scene of destruction before focusing on Vera. Captain Kane, he said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had never accepted surrender. Good to see you're still breathing. We've been tracking this broadcast along with half the galaxy. Admiral Blackwater, Vera replied, not lowering her weapon. I was beginning to think I'd have to win this war single-handed. Not quite. Your little demonstration has had some interesting effects. We've got 12 human colonies declaring independence in the last hour. The hegemony's occupation forces are facing coordinated uprisings on 47 worlds, and our deep cover assets have just activated across their entire command structure. Admiral Vexthal's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his luxury chair. The implications were staggering. The hegemony had spent 3 years consolidating their victory over humanity, believing they had crushed all resistance. But humans were like a virus. They adapted, infiltrated, and spread through any system that tried to contain them. The war was never over, Vera said. Finally understanding the larger game, you let them think they'd won while our people embedded themselves throughout their empire. Deep cover operations take time to mature. Blackwater confirmed, but your arena performance just gave us the perfect catalyst. Every enslaved species is seeing that the hegemony can bleed, that their superior warriors can be beaten by human ingenuity and determination. The hologram turned to address Admiral Vexthal directly. You made one critical error in your assessment of humanity, Admiral. You assumed that defeating our fleets meant conquering our species. But humans don't just fight wars, we become wars. We adapt, we survive, and we remember. Around the arena, emergency klaxons began wailing as reports flooded in from across hegemony space. Sabotage at critical infrastructure nodes, command ships suffering mysterious systems failures, entire garrison forces disappearing without trace. The coordinated uprising that Vera's demonstration had triggered was spreading like wildfire through their empire. What do you want? Vexthal asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Unconditional surrender, Blackwater replied without hesitation. Complete withdrawal from all human colonial territories. Reparations for the worlds you've devastated. And the public trial of every hegemony official responsible for war crimes against civilian populations. That's impossible. The Council of Species would never agree to such terms. They don't have a choice, Vera interjected. Your empire is collapsing from within. Every minute this broadcast continues, more species are joining the rebellion. You can surrender now with some dignity intact, or you can watch your civilization burn from the inside out. The Admiral's compound eyes darted around the VIP section, looking for support from his fellow officials, but they were already backing Away, some frantically activating personal communication devices to contact their home worlds. The smart ones were trying to negotiate separate peace deals. Before the rebellion reached their systems, the humans have a saying, Vera continued, stepping back but keeping her weapon trained on the Admiral. Give someone enough rope, and they'll hang themselves. You gave me a wooden stick, thinking it would make for better entertainment. Instead, you handed me the tool that brought down your empire. She looked up at the broadcast equipment, addressing not just the hegemony leadership but every species watching across the galaxy. This is Captain Vera Kane of the Human Colonial Marines. To every enslaved population, every conquered world, every species that's been told they're inferior, you've just seen what determination can accomplish. The hegemony isn't invincible. They bleed, they break, they fall. Her voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. The age of empire is over. The age of freedom begins now. The broadcast ended, but its effects would ripple across the galaxy for generations. Within 6 months, the hegemony would collapse under the weight of simultaneous uprisings on over 300 worlds. The species that had once cowered before alien superiority would remember that courage was more powerful than technology, that the will to resist could overcome any oppression. And in the ruins of the arena, surrounded by the corpses of enemies who had underestimated humanity's capacity for violence and ingenuity, Captain Vera Kane finally allowed herself to smile. They had given her a wooden stick, expecting entertainment. Instead, she had given them revolution. The hunt was over, humanity had won, and the galaxy would never be the same.